Yeah, so we just talked about like all the problems that we have with 5th Ed D&D and what we're trying to do with the West Marches, what I'm trying to do with the West Marches. Ha ha. And
Yeah, somehow Steven has managed to sucker me into helping make his job easier to murder me and give me diseases.
yeah, absolutely.
What are friends for?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know exactly where we wanted to go from here. I mean, the 3 questions left on the chat is
No, that was it, right? Like we just wanted to sit and like talk shit and then be like, yeah, 5th edition sucks. Let's just keep playing.
The end. Goodbye.
Thanks for coming, everybody. It's a terrible, terrible show. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, there are ways to hack a game, right? The most common, I think, are to just take things out that you don't like, right? To say like, this blows, it's gone. It's the easiest and also most dangerous because I think that depending on the game, it can be like playing Jenga and you yank a mechanic out and the whole fucking game falls down. 5th edition is not the like Swiss watch that Burning Wheel is, but I think that we want to be careful about just straight up cutting stuff without replacing it. The other thing that you can do is add mechanics to a game. Usually these are like things people love from other games. Like if you really like beliefs, instincts, and goals, but you're playing Shadowrun, put those things together and try to make them fit. So additions, subtractions, additions, and then edits. And edits are way harder because they take an existing mechanic and you have to retune it. And we don't have the advantage of, the several hundreds of hours, I hope, that Wizards playtested Dungeons and Dragons with.
Yep.
Like Mike Merles, I'm looking at you. But also we don't have the same problems that they do in that we're not making a game for sale. We're making a game for play. And so the only people, Steven, that you need to worry about are you and the 20-odd people that are playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that advantage of it doesn't have to be the lowest common denominator, like will everyone understand this? It just has to be like, is this a thing that makes my game time easier and the player's life more fun? And I think we can do that. I think we have that power. I think it's within our grasp.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to start with the easy one? Should we cut it out?
Which one's the easiest to cut out?
Well, I don't know. That's the question, right? Like, so we talked about the game being combat focused, and I really don't think that you can, I really don't think you can just take all the combat rules and
throw
them out.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
like you can't fight anymore.
The easiest one to cut is inspiration.
It is. Now,
but I'm not sure we want to.
So it's part of a reward structure, right? Like it's one of those things we talked about as the players are rewarded with inspiration by role-playing their character sort of in a not very good way.
Yeah.
Right.
So now, we can say like rather than cutting inspiration, we can cut the way inspiration is rewarded. But cutting it and then changing it, I mean that's just an edit, right?
That's an edit. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to add it to the list. We're going to edit inspiration. We won't do that now, but let's make the list. Okay. Yep. Can we cut backgrounds? Is that a thing? Do we want to throw those out? Do they matter?
They do give you at the start of the game. They give you additional skills, additional equipment, additional coinage. Like I don't think we can cut them because
Okay, so let's
they mechanically impact the power of your character.
Let's talk about backgrounds in 2 ways. So as a character generation thing, I think that they're good.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do in play, right?
Like nothing, except get in the way.
They all have that like kind of pseudo advantagey thing where it's like some of them are like you get like mine, the big problematic one where it's like you don't have to make certain rolls.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think they all have one of those little things built in, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. They do.
All right. So I think that we want to edit those, but we don't want to cut them. We want to keep them, but edit them. So you're starting to see a pattern here, right?
Yep.
There isn't really anything we can just cut wholesale. What about alignment? You like alignment? You want to throw it away? Thanks.
Now, I think like you're probably the best person to ask about that. Personally, I don't see alignment as contributing to the West Marches at all. But I wouldn't want to cut it without like if it is important to players in their concept of the character.
I both agree and disagree. So I agree that it probably doesn't matter if we were just playing as a group together.
Yeah.
Because, like, Kurthak doesn't care that Grigori's chaotic evil.
Mm-hmm.
The NPCs in the town don't care. The other player, the Ko's character, Shaldrick or Maldrick, whichever, they're always the same character in my head. The Dwarf brothers don't care that I'm evil. But the audience really cares.
Yes.
The fact that I chose to make a chaotic evil character pretending not to be, that's important to people's visualization of the character. But again, it's just as important as like I'm, 6'8" or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it can stay because it doesn't matter.
Yep, I agree exactly. Like, I don't think we should edit alignment. I think making some kind of a system that works in line with alignment. So like a while ago, I was toying with creating some kind of alignment system for adventurers that works like Pendragon's traits system. Mm-hmm. And it's something that could be pursued for an entirely new game, but I think it's such a heavy addition that we wouldn't even want to worry about it in 5th ed. So,
I mean, I think if, again, like, this is a show and it's a quality of characters, and D&D nerds, myself included, I love trying to guess what alignment characters are, and I love watching them be like, oh, that was a really like lawful evil thing to do. Mm-hmm. I think it helps characters. It helps players envision their character in the same way that other kind of non-mechanical bullshit does. But I think you also could be in a position where you don't need to explain it to new characters. You can say, alignment is a thing, but you don't really need to worry about it. And if people don't pick an alignment, it doesn't affect them.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I've always operated on the philosophy that like most people in the world don't really care about good or evil or law or chaos. Well, so if you haven't chosen one, then you just care about other things.
Neutral wasn't neutral originally.
Yeah,
right?
even neutral.
Neutral was unaligned.
Yes.
So it was like you were aligned with the forces of law, you were aligned with the forces of chaos, or you weren't aligned in any way. And like only like Stygian archwizards were chaotic, and only like high paladins were lawful.
Yes.
There was no good or evil alignment. And I think that this is a way that we could change alignment and say that everyone is neutral unless you have some specific reason not to be. But again, there's no mechanic for it, so it barely matters. So we'll put it on it stays, but we don't care about it.
Oh man, now I'm thinking of something cool where like everybody starts out neutral or unaligned until you actively take action that throws yourself into alignment with one of these ideals. And then like the ideals in the West Marches are these strange and esoteric forces. I don't know. I don't think it's worth going into deep details about, but now I have a seed in my brain.
So it's a thing, right? Like, okay, alignment traditionally in games, it started as very cosmological, and we're like, you are choosing to align yourself with a particular type of power, right? Well, it was a spiritual thing, but it became a behavioral thing very slowly over time.
I mean,
right?
Did it come from the Chronicles of Amber?
No, it's from 3 Hearts and 3... I can never remember the other part. It's like a ton of D&D tropes come from it. Someone in chat knows what it is. I read it ages ago. 3 Hearts and 3 Lions. And it was like that book is about a war between the forces of law and the forces of chaos. Yeah. And they're like actual armies. I mean,
that's true of the Book of Amber as well, but I guess this predates.
Yeah, and I mean you see it in a ton of stuff, right? Like Warhammer is all about the chaos, and like so it's a cosmological choice that became a behavioral or psychological one. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are ways like you could replace it with something better, or you could mechanize it, right? You could say that you start neutral, but sacrificing a peasant to the elder gods gets you 1 evil point or 1 chaos point. Yep. And then you get rewarded. I mean, you can Mass Effect it, right? You can say it's a part of your character, and your character changes as a result. Yeah. Roll it into character change. And make it a thing.
I think maybe I'll put like a big question mark next to alignment.
Yeah,
because like
I think this one's the part of the Venn diagram between stays without change and maybe we're gonna edit it.
So let's make this entry. Like, what should we think more about?
Yeah, stuff for next time.
And alignment is definitely on there. Because man, I've got this idea of like maybe every serious weapon in the West Marches is aligned with some sort of ideal, and you have to be aligned with that ideal in order to use that thing. Or who knows? I mean, or like the ascendants that you begin meeting that are all aligned with ideals. So like you cannot align with the Wounded Wretch unless you are some form of chaotic or evil or something.
Well, I mean, you can look at them as ascension paths, right? Where like at the highest point, only one person can have 10 chaos points. So you got to go find the previous 10 chaos guy and off them and take their place.
Yeah.
Which would add a whole other thing into the... This would be like epic tier West Marches, where you stop exploring and you start ascending.
Yes.
So, okay. I mean, I think what we're doing right now is really player focused, because that's where you got to start, because 4/5 of every game is player.
Yeah.
But there is some space around, and maybe this could be a follow-up around like how to, from a DM perspective, how to build that stuff and how to change reward structure and changing treasure and monsters. But we can talk about that later.
Cool.
Okay, so is there anything that the game is doing that's hindering us that we can just flat out cut off the top of our head? Like, I can't think of anything.
Traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws.
Okay. Yeah, because they don't matter. So how do we get inspiration instead?
That's not a question for right now, Adam.
Okay, all right. So you think that they, assuming that we're going to patch this, they don't need to exist because they don't effectively do their job. They're fired from D&D.
The only people I've ever seen care about them are people who already know a lot about 5th edition and build their entire character and really get it into their character and then play their character that way. Yeah. But pulling it off of tables that come from your background, like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote my my traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws literally to get me advantage as often as I could get it. Like I was like, if I can't in every scene hit one of these, I wrote them poorly. And I don't think, like, I think for everybody else, they're just kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot, this is my thing, I'm going to try to roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So are there things that we can add to the game? I mean, I would say that things that can stay but need to be added is experience points.
Yeah, of
like,
course.
Experience rewards. They can stay.
Stays. So like XP, treasure.
This falls under the stay but get edited list. You don't even need a separate list for this.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like, obviously, experience is fine. We accept the progression. We think that the amount of time it takes to get from level to level is okay, right? Mm-hmm. But we need to edit how you get those things.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's worth noting, I see someone in chat just saying something. Tidoman says, maybe it would be really neat to have a certain level cap where players need to train from these powerful forces since nobody else can teach them special powers or advanced techniques. That's definitely an interesting idea, but presented in that way, it's not a mechanical one, right? It's a story-based one. It's like, okay, at some point, then you need to go find something that the GM has put out for you to find. It's like the story grows because we want the story to grow that way, rather than there's some sort of systemic reason for it. It'd be like, maybe... here's a way to present that in a more systemic way. Creatures give you two kinds of XP, white XP and black XP. And like, your white XP can only advance you to a certain point, and beyond that point, you start needing black XP in order to advance any further at all. And like, the creatures, because of the design of the system, the creatures that give you black XP are really weird, really strange, really out there, and they have a high chance of like changing you in weird ways. So, like, maybe you can only get to level 10 with white XP, and then if you want to hit a level 11, you need black XP. Just throwing it out there. So, right, I mean, what we want to focus on in this discussion is those systemic rule set changes that help completely change the way players interface with the game.
Yeah. So, do we need to straight up add in any brand new systems from the scope of what we're talking about? I know you've already done a lot of that on the GM side, but for the ways that players interface with the mechanisms, do you think that we need to add anything wholesale right here?
It's hard to say yes, because I don't think we have enough information right now. Like, there's no clear yes.
Sure.
I like the additions that I've made as far as like being able to advance the world through the town. And there are still other things that we haven't even addressed or talked about yet, other improvements that I want players to be able to make to the world.
Yeah. I'd suggest adding to this section something for, like, because player downtime right now feels like a cost, not a benefit. So character downtime, like if I'm away for 6 weeks or 6 sessions, something should change for my character and not just you lose some money.
Yeah. Did you see the most recent stuff that we did at the start of last episode?
No.
So we can pull that out and talk about it. I have already added something that does something like that, but maybe it doesn't go far enough. Maybe it goes too far in certain ways. But I'm happy to say, yes, we should add something to make downtime interesting.
Yeah, like, I mean, the way, so, again, I'm going to go back to a game that I think handles downtime really well. Burning Wheel, you're allowed to make practice tests. So you essentially gain experience in the game for as much downtime as you had. So if I'm like, well, I've got 6 weeks, I'm going to spend 8 hours a day for the first 2 weeks practicing my sword skills. And then I'm going to practice praying, and then I'm going to do these things. So you're able to build in some kind of advancement, albeit at a slower rate and in a safer environment. Whether that, and again, it'll tie into our reward structure, but it'd be good to, because right now not being able to be on the show just feels like you fall behind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Sure. Okay. What else might we possibly need to add?
Well, we can come back to this, right? It doesn't have to be a chronological list.
Taking something like exploration currently isn't rewarded at all. Adding a reward to exploration is actually an edit, right?
Okay, why don't we just start with some edits? Why don't we let's look at experience, right? Because I think that is ultimately, D&D is about experience first, treasure as a means to be better at gaining experience, and then special rewards kind of just happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the core model right now is fight monsters, get XP.
Yes.
That doesn't work.
Yes.
I mean, you can get XP for fighting monsters because you risk your character. Maybe that's a thing that we want to like soften that blow.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's not the main thing. So, what do we want to reward players for with experience?
So the big thing in the West Marches is you're exploring an unknown world and you're discovering new things and then messing with it. So like one of the things that I played with last time was setting a goal in order to accomplish a certain task as a group, because the West Marches is all sort of ostensibly all one shots, so incentivizing you to go out, do a thing, and then come back, I feel plays well for the structure of the game. So I'll just jot down some ideas.
Sure, of course.
XP for accomplishing a session goal. XP for discovering a thing, and maybe not just discovering it, because you can like discovering a thing is fairly random. You can choose to explore an area and make more discovery tests, but whether or not you find something that's quote unquote worth putting on the map is up to the random tables. So like I put in some, like, mentally I had some sort of extra qualification where you have to discover a thing and then you also have to spend time and energy marking it.
So so here's the thing. Let's say we get experience for exploration.
Mm-hmm.
What makes exploration worth more or less experience? Should I get more experience for discovering something for the first time, like adding something to the map?
Yes.
Should I be encouraged? But if let's say I get 100 experience for discovering a thing, and that's just a placeholder number, obviously it has to scale.
Mm-hmm.
Should I get more experience or less experience for revisiting an old location and clearing it out more?
Mm-hmm. A good
right? Is that
question.
worth more or less? Is it worth more if it's further away from Viraskali?
I would say yes, because it's more dangerous, but
okay, so
let's keep talking.
That's a GM thing, right? Do we have the Dragon Warrior thing where the concentric circles away from the town get more and more dangerous?
Exactly.
If so, do the players know that? Because we should never leave Circle 1 until we've cleared everything there and then move to Circle 2. Because essentially you're just making the world a dungeon with circles instead of levels.
Mm-hmm. Yep, pretty much.
Which it's not a criticism, it's just a thing.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? That the further away from the law and from civilization you are, the more dangerous the world becomes. So, what else about it? Is it worth more experience for clearing a dungeon? Like, exploring every single room? Is thoroughness rewarded?
Mm-hmm.
Is exploring an entire hex? Like, are you going to tell us, okay, you found everything in this hex?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody get a certain amount of experience? How does that interact with random stuff that just shows up? Is it added to the hex? Do you get experience for just rolling well on a table?
Yep, that's a good question.
I mean, this is what functionally what game design is, right? It's the Socratic method where you ask yourself a bunch of questions until you come to a point where there are no more questions to ask.
Yes.
And that's the truth. So it can be kind of a grueling process. So I think we can agree that discovery and exploration is worth experience, but what do you want to encourage the players to do, basically? What does exploration look like in this game, right? How would you, in your mind, if I was playing West Marches correctly, if I'm playing it right, what am I doing?
Okay, big spoiler alert, chat. If you haven't seen the most recent episode of the West Marches, mute us and don't watch my lips move. So, the most recent episode of the West Marches is the perfect example of how the West Marches should, quote-unquote, be played as far as exploration and discovery. They went out, they got lost. They didn't know where they were. They rolled well on a random table, which gave them a really interesting result. They stumbled across 3 hot springs, at the bottom of which slept 3 great serpents. And then, instead of saying, let's go the other way, they shot arrows into the pool until the serpents woke up. They walked up to the serpents, they started talking to them, they convinced a serpent to give them a boon, they got a magic lance from one of the serpents, they went off, did some other stuff, had some shit happen to them, came back, and then tried to get a serpent to do another favor for them. Like, they found something dramatic, new, interesting, and also, random, and then they messed with it to hell and back.
Yeah.
And I love that.
So, okay, so this is the thing, is that, think about that in the current reward structure. What they should have, according to Dungeons & Dragons, is assessed whether or not they could win the fight with the things.
Yes.
Shot them until they were not awake but dead.
Yes.
Then looted them for treasure.
Yes.
And the treasure was a secondary reward. The primary reward was we fucked up these serpents.
Yes.
So the funny thing is that the people were in that situation. They were playing the game. They were playing West Marches correctly, but not being rewarded for it.
Yep, absolutely.
They were doing it right by accident.
Yep.
So really, and this is where in character like disagreement would come up, because if I were there, I would have been like, let's get the fuck out of here. This is a bad idea, because I know the game's not going to reward us for this.
Yep.
So it's you want to reward players for playing the game correctly. So in that circumstance, I think that you reward players for discovering things, for discovering those locations. You discover them for learning more about the location, I guess. So, think about it this way. Like, let's imagine that you discover a location, you get 500 experience. Like in World of Warcraft, right? Like, you've discovered the Barrens. Here's some XP.
Yeah.
But doing quests in the Barrens is where, the real money is at. So, we discover a location. How are we incentivized to continue from our first discovery of it? What's the next step?
The messing with it? Like, I'm putting into the document a player story. Like, this is the ideal West Marches experience. 1, we discovered a weird thing. And then what's the next step is what you're asking, Adam? Yeah,
you discover the weird thing. Then what?
And then 2, we mess with it to investigate, to find out more about it.
So investigation, rather than just... So it's discovery, investigation. How do you know that you've completed the investigation phase of that? How do you, as a GM, know, okay, you have investigated?
To me, on the GM side, I think the reason I felt comfortable giving them rewards for that particular encounter is it felt like they took a risk, and then they dealt with the consequences. And it happened to turn out in their favor, but even if it hadn't turned out in their favor, that's not a reason not to reward them for it, right?
Yeah.
So, like...
well, the fact that it turns out, so there's the explicit reward of like, yeah, you messed with it, here's some XP. The implied reward is you get to keep playing your character because you got away alive or you killed it, right? Because I think that yeah, like let's imagine like I discover a dangerous monster, right? And I stick around enough to learn something about the monster. So I'm like, okay, I found an ogre. I've never seen an ogre before. I stuck around long enough to learn that ogres like eating human flesh, right? That's a useful piece of information. Now, in the process, if I manage to sneak away, great. If I woke the ogre up, I got to kill the ogre, but I shouldn't be rewarded necessarily for killing the ogre, because otherwise, what's the point of investigating when I could just kill it? And I could investigate, oh, hey, ogres have 2 livers. because I killed one and chopped it open.
Yeah, and now I see how many it has inside.
Yeah. So, are we talking about? I mean, I think and this is great for things like the wiki and for player information. You're gonna want to. The first time thing is really important. You're gonna want to be the first one to discover like a thing, right? So it's really going to inspire players to not necessarily return to locations, but if the investigation reward is higher, if in the last session, like this is perfect. Here's a perfect example. So we found the altar. We didn't really investigate it. We didn't have a lot of time. We all left, right? Now, if we got 100 experience for being the discoverers of the altar, that's cool. But it's even cooler if you get 500 experience for being the one who figures out how the altar works, and that'll inspire people to go back because you might not get that first discovery, but now you know it's there and you can go and investigate it. So from the GM side, maybe you have specific things about each location. This is how. So here's the thing. This is how old AD&D tournament adventures worked. And if you've never seen one, remind me. I'll send you a PDF I've got of like slavers. So a lot of old adventures were premiered at Gen Con, and they would be like, okay, to win this adventure, these are what the players have to do, and you'd get 1 point for surviving. You get 1 point for going into every room. You get another point if you discover a specific thing. So if it's like, oh, if you figured out that the secret door led to the Underdark, cool, 1 point.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think that if you, and it requires a little bit of work for you, but I think you're prepping these encounters at least as blocks in advance. If you investigate specific stuff about them, like if you learned that, God, I want to use real examples, but they're all spoilers. If you learned that the statute of limitations over, I have leprosy, everybody knows it. If you learned that fucking with the altar gives you leprosy, that's 1 point. That's a thing on the discovery list. And then once the whole thing has filled out, you've explored the location, right? We've cleared the dungeon.
Yeah.
And this would be a way for you to think of this as the challenge rating of an encounter, right? If an encounter only has one thing to discover, like you discovered that this thing exists. Bam, good job. There are half-wolves. Everybody who discovered it, whether you fought it or you ran away, you get a point, right? But if you discover, who invented the half-wolves, who's causing them to like hunt the plains, where did their evil magic come from? You could build in checklists. Think of them as like countdowns in Apocalypse World. If you fill that clock or if you check off all the boxes, good job. And this could be party experience. This could be everyone involved. It's a way for you to say, okay, you have fully figured out this thing in the world. Good job. You 100%ed it. You get the achievement, the serpent achievement. Nicely done. And that was I just ranted all that out. That's what I would do. I think that like off the top of my head is instead of building challenge ratings for individual things on how tough they are to fight, build your CR around how complex they are.
Yep,
right?
I think that's very interesting. And then I mean, like you can even go mechanically for that, where it's like, okay, I mean, if you conceptualize like people's understandings of things as hit points. And like the fewer hit points the thing has left, the more you've chipped away at understanding the thing. Like you can then completely mechanize it. Yeah, you can completely mechanize it as, when you go to the location, you're using your other skills to damage, quote unquote, the investigation HP.
Well, think about this, like how. Like, okay, let's imagine there's like a big boss monster, like the sleeping god or whatever, and fucking with other stuff, like filling out other checkboxes, is like an if-then statement. Like, if you kill the god's cult, automatically check off the first box of the god, because the cult won't. Like, this is stealing stuff from fronts. It's stealing a little bit from Transylvanian adventures, where you like reduce the hit points of the big bad by fucking with its like lower stuff. Or you could have it inverse, right, where it's like if you don't. And you can build timers, right? Like if the players don't check the first box of this thing by the 15th of Scansuary, then this bad thing happens, right?
Yep.
So you're using that countdown both as a clock in game and then as a sort of damage meter for how well explored it is. And yeah, the first box for everyone is just, did you discover it?
Yeah, is it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It exists.
It is there.
Congratulations.
100 XP. Check.
Yeah. Where is it?
Yeah. Okay. That's all very interesting. Do we need to talk more about it now, or should we move on to other things like treasure and special rewards?
I mean, I think that is this the only way to earn experience?
Let me think.
We've talked a little bit about character story and discovering what those are about. Is that rewarded with experience, or is this maybe how we do inspiration instead?
I don't feel like it's right for inspiration, because inspiration as a mechanic is a thing that you can only ever have one of at a time. You're either inspired or not, right? It's binary. And like discovering things about your characters feels like something that happens less frequently than once per session, right?
Oh my god. So what if, like, okay, I'm having a brainstorm. What if the characters have countdowns too? Like, what if you say when someone makes a character, like, write down, 5 things, or write down 10 things, or whatever about your character that aren't common knowledge, and when another player finds out one of those things about you and you share that with them, you both get experience.
Yep. Is it just sharing it with that one other player, or is it like
everyone? Maybe
when anybody at the table sees it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and I'm trying to think, like, I
mean, the worry here would be that we would just spend the whole game just sitting around the table being like, so, tell me about yourself, Kurthak.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe that's okay.
The player's story for discovering more about characters comes from Kellen and his interaction with his father. So like it's less factual information and more sort of like why they are the way they are, where they want to go, how they act in certain situations when they're confronted with like things that make them uncomfortable or things like that. So it's less like, my birthday is July 9th, or...
Oh, yeah. No, it would have to be... Like, you'd have to guide players in doing this.
Yeah.
And you'd want to keep it streamlined enough that you don't have to think too much about your backstory, but you can just come up with a few things that are interesting about your character. And you'd want to set it so that, it's not like, I'm going to spend the first 20 minutes explaining my backstory so that we all get XP. Like, it has to come out organically some way.
I mean, I almost feel like this also could be a countdown of sorts. And maybe it's a countdown where, like, each player just chooses, they just think about what's the next step for my character. So it would be like, Kellen's first step, the first point on his countdown is trying to find out what happened to his parents. Okay, he found that out. Good, check. What's the next step? Trying to meet his parents. Okay, he met his parents. Check. What's the next step? And maybe that can exist for everybody. I
think this intersects with the other thing, and honestly, like, this is something that you could include in the game to have, like, what is my goal? But that does the, like, we're not a fist anymore, we're an open hand problem, where it's like, I don't want to do your thing because I don't get any experience for it. I want to do my thing. I want to go and wake up Cthulhu. But I think that, you want it to be a thing that's like rewardable every session, that everyone should be able to go after, but is a secondary mechanism that builds character and it doesn't take away from all the exploration stuff. Like exploring, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think exploring each other's character backgrounds or each other's ideas about our story matters as much as exploring the world, right? Like I think we're a second tier from that.
Yeah, we would rather explore the world, and seeing interesting things about characters happen along the way is good.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. There's some people in chat that are saying, like, well, why is it even important to reward XP? Like, why can't the GM just decide when you level up? But the thing about the game is that if the rewards are only at the end of the session, it makes it hard to decide what the right thing to do moment to moment is, and puts a lot of pressure on those decisions at the end. And people remember the stuff that happened at the end of the session much better than at the beginning.
Yep.
So it can be tricky that way.
So yeah, role-playing advancement when we see more about your character, like seeing Grigori, Statute of Limitations is over on this one too. When we see Grigori murder the shit out of an innocent person, that is something that, like, I feel like the players as spectators, we all should earn experience points for seeing something that dramatic about a new character, or
So what do we do then when to balance out that, like, some people are better at bringing those things to the forefront? Like, that puts a lot of pressure on you to manage spotlight time. because if I play a whole session and either I'm too quiet or shy or just like, can't get a moment in the spotlight and I don't get experience and I fall behind, I'm going to feel frustrated by that.
But that's why I like giving it as a pool to the entire party rather than saying, Grigori, you get 100 experience for showing that to people. It's like the party gets 100 experience for seeing that.
When you say that it's a pool for the party, is that a thing that we all split at the end of the session?
Yeah.
Or, okay, right, so it goes into, like, it's like everyone gets 100 in the pool, and then at the end we split it into an equal amount for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because XP in D&D is participatory, right? Like, it's like, if you were in the fight, you get experience. It's not like your contribution. Okay.
Yep.
So is all XP like that? Do we all earn XP as a group?
Personally, I prefer it. I mean,
I kind of do too.
Yeah.
Now, is it distributed? Let's get communistic about this. Is it distributed equally, or is it you get less experience if you're higher level than the other people in the party?
Oh God.
Because this would be a way to stop the 5th level JP, 1st level everybody else party, right?
Yep. I mean, like
if you wanted to, you could just say everybody. Here's the whole pile. Add up all the levels. Mm-hmm. Divide it by the average, and then everybody gets that much.
Yep.
And that's going to slow down.
That would actually, that would also punish lower level characters. I mean, to a certain extent. So, like, if you have a
you're running on easy mode. Yeah. Based on the way that this is the thing is that characters in Dungeons and Dragons don't get better at exploring. Yes. They only get better at surviving and fighting.
That's true.
So, I don't know, right?
I think there is something interesting there. I mean, whether it's just that, like, okay, if you're higher level, then we cut the XP you earn, or if you have somebody higher level with you, then everybody gets less. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think that it's reasonable or fair to cut part of the reward and throw it away, right? Yeah. To be like, it just vanishes. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's okay to reward less. But yeah, it would really suck at the end of the day to be like, we have 1,000 experience. Nope, actually only have 500. But like right now, in game, I want to be in a party with the highest level characters possible.
Yes.
So that I can get into fights that I couldn't survive otherwise and just load up the XP.
Yep.
Because right now in D&D, it's only divided by
I see what you're saying. So
number of players.
Right? If a high level character is carrying you through regions that are higher than you should be, then it seems very reasonable for you to get less XP because they're carrying you. But if a high level character is carrying you through regions that are like at your appropriate level, is it also reasonable for you to earn less XP? I think maybe the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so. Like, for me, the best strategy to get Grigori to a high level right now would be to get in a party at 1st level with all of the highest level characters I can find and take on stuff that I won't get one shot by and hide behind somebody and maybe just heal them. Because I think that it would protect me and I would still get the same amount of XP, so whatever. But I like the idea that if you're playing... at 1st level, a level 1 monster and a level 10 monster are both pretty goddamn dangerous. Yeah. So I want to fight stuff that's worth XP to me. But if we change it, if you don't get as much XP or any XP for fighting, I'm going to want to explore areas that give me experience and that I think we can explore safely and find alternate ways through. Right? Yeah. I want to be able to talk my way through problems. I want to be able to sneak my way through stuff. And I want everybody to share in that experience because right now, if I talk my way through a fight, nobody gets any XP. Right? Like let's avoid them. Like, you can give XP for avoiding a high CR encounter, but the game isn't built for that.
Yes.
You get one roll and either you do it or you don't.
I mean, there's an interesting question here, like do we reduce the amount of experience gained for fighting? Which I think if we're gaining experience for discovering and exploring, for watching role-playing advancement of characters, then in order to not completely overbalance the XP economy of Dungeons & Dragons, then we have to reduce the XP gain from fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, now the trick, though, is that, and this is where the real answer to this question is build a brand new game, but... Yeah. The problem is that character creation and characters in general are built to fight. And so we're given... It's like, okay, you're a person and you're tasked with building a brick wall, right? And like, okay, you've got bucket of bricks, and you got some mortar, and you got a trowel. But we're also going to give you a howitzer and a suit of chainmail, and we're going to give you 2 Uzis. And it's like, what am I going to do with these Uzis? Like, they don't help me build the wall.
Yep.
So again, like the real answer is build a game where all the skills and everything is about exploring and surviving exploration. Yeah. But I don't think that we're ready to go quite that deep into it yet.
We can have future talks in the future and come up with that. So let's see. Killing monsters reduce XP rewards. Build
certainly
other
modify.
things?
Yeah, modify it.
Yeah.
I mean, overcoming. Like I think we need to. This is the problem is that D&D gives you a hammer and so you start seeing everything as nails. So even if we change killing monsters and we just say, oh, you can overcome the monsters, right. You don't have to kill them. I am a hammer, man. I want to hammer some nails, right?
Yep.
So, it makes it hard to incentivize a player to behave a certain way. We're still going to try and kill stuff, right? Killing will always be the first thing that we go to, and we're like, these things are dangerous. But if we're not rewarded for it, we're also going to be like, well, hold on, this might be too dangerous. Let's not engage, or let's engage in a different way first.
Or let's figure something else out. Yeah, let's approach differently. Okay, so let me propose this to you and to chat. It's in the document, but I know not everybody's in there. So for role-playing advancement, like the player story for that, and when I talk about player stories, it's like someone who's playing the game tells someone else a story about what happened, and we want that sort of thing to happen more often. So the player story is Ezekiel III is playing the West Marches, and he gets a scene of his own where he gets to have a conversation with his father about what he wants and how he can go about attaining that. And it's an interesting scene where we see new things about Kellen. The proposition that I've put forwards for how to get that happening more is players start with their character, and they at character creation they define a number of character moments, and it's like, these are things that I want to see my character do in role playing, and then everybody at the table gets some experience points when we see anybody's character moment. So Kellen would have defined, I want to find out what happened to my father as the character moment. And then when he found out what happened to his father, we would reward XP for that. Maybe that one specifically doesn't work. I love the role-playing interaction between Kellen and his father as a character moment, but just finding out more information about his father maybe doesn't quite work. I don't know.
So there's some games that use what we would call they're downtime scenes or refresh scenes. Mm-hmm. So a refresh scene, they're usually used to manage character damage or whatever. So let's imagine we're playing a scene and my character gets a negative condition or damage, and then we get to a point where we're like, okay, so we're going to sit down and we're going to be around the campfire and we're going to talk. And I'm going to tell you a story about my character, and as a reward, I get to get rid of that damage that I've taken because I feel better. Our bond is strengthened. Mm. Now you can use XP for that, but what it's going to end up doing, and I can see this in play, is between sessions, people who are on this, who want to use this mechanic, they're going to work out a way to get as many of these in a session as possible, mm-hmm.
which
will slow down exploration and progression, but less so if it's less valuable, right? Or tied to a different mechanism if it's not just XP. Because I totally know that I'm going to be and this is the thing that I try to do anyway as a role player, because I like watching people role play. I like engaging with them in that way, but I wouldn't do it if I were just directly engaging the system. And so I'm going to sit down if I'm okay, so I'm playing this session, and I'm playing it with Zoe, and I'm playing with Ko, and I'm playing with JP, and I want to have a scene with maybe how can my character help your characters talk about your stuff, right? Mm. And how can I what do we have in common? How can we share this? And there's a degree of RP strategy that goes into this, because I definitely think that that's something that I would want to do.
Is it maybe that this is what gets you inspiration?
Yeah, and I think so this is the other thing, is that limits inspiration to everyone has it, and then mm-hmm. everyone uses it. And you want to use it before the next time that scene comes up, and it would change the pacing of these scenes, which is okay.
That's the other thing about inspiration that I don't really like, is that people who get it, they just don't spend it. They're this role isn't important enough for me to spend my inspiration on, and I don't understand how I'm going to get inspiration back, so I'm just going to keep it. So like actually maybe it could be interesting for it to be like, look, anytime you take a short or long rest, we can have one character exploration scene.
I completely forgot about that cycle. Yeah. No. So just make it arbitrary. Be like, when you take a long rest, do a scene, do a refresh scene, and if you do, everybody gets inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's perfect, right? Because those things happen often enough that I think that it keeps the pace going. It makes it clear. We have the scene. We don't even do it, but don't talk about it before the scene. Just be like, okay, short rest. What are you doing? And at the end of the scene, be like, did anybody explain a character moment? Did anybody show off one of their character moments? And because we did it beforehand, because we have a list, we can't cheat and be like, yeah, I just made one up and then I did it. I told everybody that, and I think that's good because you want inspiration. You want everyone to have inspiration, and you want them to be able to use it safely, knowing they can get it back.
You know what? That's actually exactly what we did when we showed Kellen's father. Because it was like, okay, it's camp time. Hey, Zeke, we wanted to have that scene, right? Let's see that. And then we went to it. Okay, that was really cool. Everybody gets inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's... And I mean, I think it runs counter to D&D in that I don't think Dungeons & Dragons does a great job of being a system in which you can frame scenes, but the GM can definitely be like, this is a mechanical thing, a long rest and a short rest, those are things, and we're going to use those to power the inspiration mechanism. Yeah, and I think that's solid. It's going to be more powerful. It's going to be more powerful if we do more long and short rests. But honestly, like I think it's a long rest maybe twice a session.
Generally, our games, I mean, the length of time that players are out in the wilds tends to be between 4 to 7 days.
Okay, and so, it has to be explicitly a mechanical long rest, not just you hang out.
Yeah,
because yeah.
I think it's worth considering whether or not it's allowed to be a short rest. Like maybe there's some sort of lesser mechanic, like in a short rest you can gain inspiration for yourself, but in a long rest the entire party does, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean these things you never know. Like we're doing these things sight unseen, right? We know about the players, we know about the world, we know the kind of game we're trying to play, we know the rules, but this is all stuff that needs to get play tested, right? Like we're gonna use it, and if it gives us inspiration too often, then we'll change it. If it doesn't give it enough, we'll change it. If inspiration doesn't work, then that's how it goes.
Yeah, and I mean, like the other natural limiting mechanic is like a player at the table needs to have a character moment to share.
Yeah,
and maybe we could. There's all sorts of levers we could pull. Like maybe you can only share one of your character moments per session. Like.
Yeah,
people just don't learn that much about each other quickly.
Yeah, no, I think you max out at 1 per player per session.
Yeah.
So it can't just be like, let's tell everybody about, no, that makes sense.
So it's just like, every night Grigori sits down and tells his life story, and
this is the Grigori
it just keeps going and going and going, and he's everybody gets inspiration. Yeah. Awesome.
I like that Grigori just became Italian.
Everybody gets inspiration.
It's me, Gregorio. Cool. If my character dies, I'm gonna play Dr. Mario.
Excellent. Love it. Yeah, okay. Well, we are close to running out of time, quote unquote. Is there any sort of really compelling changes that we feel need to be made to treasure or special rewards?
Treasure and special rewards are GM stuff.
Yep.
I don't think players have control over them, so I think what you want to do here is flip it over and look at, as a GM, what guidelines do I have for handing out treasure? What guidelines do I have for special rewards? And we can always talk about things like, what are the tables that we're using? Can we add in special reward tables based on religion? There's a bunch of stuff that we can do on the GM side that may not actually affect players in a way that they can interact with. It just happens to them, not they work on it. So I mean, I think from a player perspective and from bending D&D to fit the West Marches a little better, I think we've done a really good job getting started.
Yeah.
And now turning this into mechanisms and building a module that West Marchicizes 5e is going to be the thing, and we got to test it, right? And so the next step is getting buy-in from the players to say look, these things are untested rules. We want to try them. are you willing to like buy in under the understanding that like if we end up accidentally giving you way too much experience, we might have to roll it back, or like you might not get enough and we can compensate for that later. And I think, I mean, I know the cast, and I know that they're just there to like play and have a good time. But it's an important thing. Like if you're playing a game at the table and you want to hack it a bunch, yeah, you want to get buy-in from your players.
Yep, totally. Okay, so I think like that action item off of this meeting is I should take the potential new rules for discovery and exploration XP, and then also like. I'm really not convinced about session goals, but at least discovery and exploration XP and like the way that we get role-playing inspiration advancement, and put together like just a quick 1-paragraph blurb. This is the way this works now. We could talk about it again because we're not actually playing the West Marches this weekend, before we put it into play, see what kind of Socratic questions we can come up with the proposed, system. And then the next time we play, I can just be like, okay, guys, I'd love to test this out.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Like I'd love to flip this over onto the GM side and look at that, and then spend some time looking at what we come up with after we like hang on to this for a little bit, let it percolate.
Yep. Sleeping on an idea is always great.
Yeah, and hey, maybe we can schedule a Hack Attack 2nd edition, and we'll come back and look at this again.
Yep, definitely.
Cool, man.
All right, y'all. I think that's all we're going to do for today, but if you enjoyed this, then great, because I sure did. I love talking about games.
Yeah, game design, super fun.
Yeah. Adam, do you want to tell people about yourself?
Yeah. I mean, you're in my channel, so I assume you know who I am. If you don't follow me on Twitter already, I'm at Skinny Ghost. You're here. There's a button down there. It says follow on it. Just click that bad boy. I'll be happy to host my dear friend Steven again for more conversations like this. I'm super into game design, and I like picking games apart. So there's more of that on my channel if you feel like sticking around. Awesome. Where can we find you, Steven?
You can find me on Twitter at Silent0siris. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube at Silent0siris. We will figure out some way to get this hosted up on Adam's YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'll get it up on my YouTube. Also, if you like listening to Steven and I talk and admiring our beautiful faces, you can do more of that at ItMeJP on our semi-weekly show, Being Everything Else, where we talk about GM stuff.
A person in chat asked, Spookhafta asked, I run a weekly 5e game. If I test your mods, would you want feedback?
Yes.
But so probably not quite yet, right? We haven't even made them into mods. We've just talked about ideas. But once we put out a module, absolutely, play it, test it, give us feedback all the time.
We'll put out a beta version of this, probably as like a simple PDF and something, and say like, these are the kinds of feedback we're looking for. Playtesting is a tricky game, so we'll give you instructions on how best to playtest it. Obviously, ideas are free, so if you like what we're working on here and you want to go do your own thing with it, yeah, go for it. But as far as playtesting goes, yeah, we'll get to a point where we're going to explicitly ask for that, and we'll probably do that both in my subreddit and on JP's and all the rest of the internets.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
All right, y'all. That's it. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next time we have shows.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Bye.